the sum of all wisdom. Conversations on music, makers, meaning, and more. We're redefining wisdom. It's not proverbs and bougie morality games. It's insurgent, it's rebellious, it's revolutionary. It's, let's call it, subversive. The players are prophets in their own right. It's upstart, countercultural types who run against the grain and say the thing that is unsayable. That's wisdom as we mean it. It's raw, unfiltered, street-level goodness. Music and musicians are our wisdom mongers, the ones who give it to us real, live, and vivid. And that's what we're about. Redefining wisdom and putting the pieces together in new ways that shed light and heat on stuff we care about as we build a digital archive of public memory that matters. Today is a special entry into that archive. We're talking with Andrew Hunt, who leads two bands. His first is called Cowboy Andy and the Salamanders, a long-standing, legendary, and very well-loved all-ages rock band from Missoula, Montana. They recently played Queer Prom, and they regularly tour and play shows and festivals around the region. Andrew recently formed a second band called Flask, and they've been active also, playing the scene as well, and recording and releasing new music. Andrew has been playing, writing, and performing music for something like 30 or 40 years, and it's an honor and a pleasure to have him join me today. But let's start with one of Flask's upcoming new releases. It's called Shady Grove, and it's different from what you're thinking. This is a rough mix. I'm playing it here with Andrew's permission, and it's one of my favorites from Andrew and Flask. And I want to share it with you because it's just so damn good. Drop what you're doing and dig this.
Ruthie woke up in Shady Grove, day 1274. Put on her fuzzy blue slippers and walked across the rest home floor. Said into the mirror as she put on her summer hat, I'm gonna see the ocean. And she stole the Shady Grove van. Out of a coma after 2 years and into traffic jams, leaving Wichita, Kansas, headed for San Diego Sands. Takes a lot of unleaded to make that shady van go. Sold her wedding ring, knew her late great Henry would know. See the ocean, save for one little flatland farm girl. California sunshine on a postcard from World War II. She waited more than 50 years to see if it was Zanzibar stow, she stopped to catch her breath. She could see the water, hear the waves of San Diego Beach. But in the desert, the ocean is always out of reach. Wichita Tribune, page 23, obituaries. Widow Ruth Grady's disappearance still remains a mystery. Probably a gang of punks took her and stole the Shady Grove van. One recovered wedding ring and a postcard. A San Diego sand.
All right. That song, once again called Shady Grove, written by Andrew Hunt and performed by his band Flask. That's a rough mix of the song. It's due to be released soon, and we'll talk about that with Andrew, today's guest, on The Sum of All Wisdom. Andrew and I have known each other for about 50 years. Grade school, high school, college. We went through a lot together. We even destroyed a piano during our younger days at Clinton Elementary School in Clinton, Montana. That might be a story for another time, though. We lost touch for a couple of decades and recently reconnected because I really wanted to have Andrew on the show. He's just an outstanding musician, really high quality composer chops. He's a singer, a songwriter, a guitarist, a band leader, an industry professional. He's a voting member of the Recording Academy. He's just an all-around multi-talented artist and performer and exceptional human being. And he's one of the people I am proudest to call my friend. So we got together recently to chat, and over the course of a couple of calls, we spent a few hours catching up and getting reacquainted and having the conversation for this episode. It's been a whole lot of fun and good for my soul. And we started out, the conversation kind of went all over the place, but let's drop into where we started talking about artistic integrity and success.
Oh, if you being reflective as a songwriter, I'm hypercritical of my material, and really reluctant to share some of the stuff that I think is the best because it won't land well, because I think it won't land well.
But there's something there at the same time.
Well, I like it.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
And so and it's the thing. I think for me, it's like I wouldn't write and work up a song and put the effort and the passion and the energy and the focus into a song, get it done, and if I didn't want to hear it, if it wasn't like if somebody else did this, if I heard it on the radio type thing, I would think it's interesting and it's like cool and it moves me one way or another emotionally, and that's what I'd want. And so, in a way, that's a litmus test for the songs, whether they stick around or not. You write them on Tuesday, you maybe pull it back out Wednesday and Thursday, and if you aren't playing it still on Friday, it's gone. And it was just like,
What's the rationale for the not playing it on Friday? Is that I don't like it anymore, or is that I'm not seeing the reception that I want?
It's all internal. It'd be like, well, if I'm not excited about it after 3 days, and remembering it, and trying to work on it or enhance it, then it just didn't have legs. I don't know if you know who there's an artist in Pittsburgh named Bob Qualters, who I got to know really well. And he's a very unique, very specific artist, really does a lot of textured stuff. And I spent a lot of time in his studio when I was out there and have spent a lot of time with him since. Every time I visit, old school artist, and it was the first time that I actually realized how many different drafts of a painting that he would do, because there was the same, there were sketches and then just 18 variations on canvas, all just like laying in piles all over his studio, and then the big one that he's working on currently. And there would be something about that final, he would just keep doing it and doing it and doing it until he got to one version where he hit some sort of a tipping point where it was okay. And then his problem was he couldn't stop. Then he just kept, once he had one that was good, that was like the keeper, he didn't know when to stop adding to it. And he would come, and that was his comment. He would kind of complain about it. He'd be like, and talking to himself as he was up there, chiseling with the, like, oh, okay, Bob, it's time to stop. Yep, nope, don't do, you can't take that off, do too much, and painting over things that he did, 5 layers, and because his textured stuff is just really cool, and admonishing himself as he was standing there, time, I gotta stop, good enough, no, but constantly doing it. But it was weird because he'd get to that point where it was like, you look around and there's, all of the same versions, just slightly different, maybe different sizes, slightly different textures and color hues, and then the one that was going to be the finished. And I guess any one of those could have been, after the first sketches and stuff, it could have been the finished, but they just didn't, he'd get to a point and he'd be like, nope, start over on the same theme.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting, the sense of, so 2 things come out of that for me immediately. One is we all edit somehow. Whatever our professional output is, pardon the capitalist expression, but whatever we do, it's got to involve some editing. So that's thing one. And editing, I think, is its own thing. If you can self-edit, that's a real skill. Whether it's songwriting, book writing, painting, sculpting, self-editing and sculpting has got to be like, oh my God, if I mess this up, that's a whole block of marble or whatever my medium is. The other thing is inspiration, right? So he might start with an idea, whatever the sketching goes for, but ultimately inspiration is, as they say, 1% and the rest is perspiration. And that's what this iterative process that you just described says to me. It's like art takes a while. You don't just write a poem, or craft a piece of something. Maybe you do. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I think some of my favorite songs over the years are the ones that, and maybe it's when I was in high school, I was in speech and debate, and I
did we do that together?
Were we in it together?
I did speech and debate one year. I don't remember who else was in it, but my presentation was on rats and how they were going to be the only survivors of the nuclear holocaust that was coming under Reagan, we assumed.
Yeah.
They're going to fuck up all of our Sundays, right? It was going to be rats and roaches.
Different bit of doom there.
I'm sorry, I digressed.
It's okay. No, in speech and debate, did you do it at Hellgate with Vance Allred? Was that your coach back then? Do you remember?
Oh my God, I have no idea.
Oh, Vance Allred was just one of the best people I've ever known. You find those teachers, those people along the way who are unique and just stepping outside of the mainstream, and they usually don't last very long because beauty can't survive in a toxic environment. But in speech and debate, what I pursued was impromptu because I kind of thrived in it. I did thrive because I was successful. I went to state and all that sort of thing. And so that idea of like, okay, here's a cartoon. You have 3 minutes to look at it and come up with a 3 to 5 minute spiel. And back then, I've judged speech and debate since, and they've kind of changed the rules, and it's much easier now. And the speakers get a timer, but back then you didn't have a timer. You just had to just feel what is a 3 minute to a 5 minute.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah, if you didn't make the 3, you were in trouble, but you didn't have a timer. Now they give them timers, and it's different. Yeah, I remember the first time when we were practicing impromptu, and I made it to the 3 minute mark. That was the hardest part. Making the 3 minute mark was always hard, which is, now that I'm thinking about it, it's interesting because the parallel between the fact that I was successful at that and really enjoyed the pressure and that format. And then I look at a lot of the songs I've written when I first had my first 4-track and I was living in Alaska and just turning it on with a guitar and one, which I thought was a great mic, but it was actually just a cheap mic. But it was great because I spent too much money on it and I didn't know anything, and I still don't know anything about tech. And the 4-track and my acoustic guitar, my Ovation, and just playing and just maybe working on a song. But the best thing was when I was working a song that I had written, and then after, when the tape is still rolling, just kind of noodling and getting a feel for something, and then just like hitting an open G and open the mouth and just start singing. And then just play and sing and just make it up. And there's probably a dozen songs from that time that are still keepers in my catalog that were just, that's it. And no edits, no changes, just that's it. And the band plays them now, So when I'm doing big songs for Flask especially, but for the Cowboy Andy and the Salamanders too, in the studio, that's when my editing mode goes really into overdrive, when it's going to be that final. And that's when I'm kind of like the artist. I don't know when to stop. Like I will just kind of keep adding, oh, let's do another layer of guitars, or the distortion doesn't sound big enough. So let's do the Marshall, and things that I know nobody can hear, and I can't even hear in the final. But I want to include them in there, even if they're not. Even if nobody knows, even if they're not there.
I do. I know exactly. I'm a hard editor.
Do you have sections that you look at wholesale and you're like, this is really good, but it doesn't fit?
Oh, all the time. Yeah.
Do you take those and then put them somewhere like, well, I want to come back to this because there's something there that I want to use at some point?
I do. I have folders that are filled with exactly those kinds of cuts. Like I know there's something in there. I got to spend some time with it, extracted from this other thing that I was thinking about. I rarely, if I'm honest, go back to them.
That's it. Yeah. That's the voice memo on my phone. It's got 1,000 clips of awesome stuff that I'm never gonna I just don't have time to go back and. There's this one progression that I've been working on the piano for literally 25 years, and I'm like, this is really great. And unfortunately, like you were when you mentioned 12 tones and 6 billion songs, there's only so many variations and variables. You feel like there's a finite amount of music that can be made and created until you make something that's like, how many 145 songs are out there in the 50s and 60s?
Like almost all of them.
Almost all of them. But there's something about and it's very individual. But for me, there's about 80 of them out of the tens of thousands that I've heard that are really good. And of that, there's like 6 of them that are just like, yeah, that's desert island music that I wouldn't want to be on a desert island without Folsom Prison Blues. Because it's just such a great song.
It's perfect.
And it's 145, and it's so simplistic, but yeah. I love the fact that music can do that.
I mean, that's it. That's the reason music does it in so many ways, right? Whether it's chord progressions and the way that sounds and works for us, or layering words on top of that line, or finding the right chords in that 145, right? It's not just majors, not just minors. It's how do we what's the tweak? This is so your nuance, the nuance conversation that you're talking about with the mixing, right? Finding is that enough distortion? Is that the right distortion? I think even if it seems like I can't hear it, it matters. At least to you. And that means that influences how and when and whether it gets put out for other people to appreciate, even if they're not in the mix of all 20 tracks, and do they do exactly what they should do?
Yeah, totally. I find it's especially true when we're doing covers with the bands because there'll be, when you go to do a cover, you have the choice. You're either going to do it just like the original, trying to like a 1-to-1, or for me anyway, the way that I approach covers, either try and do an exact cover or change it to make it your own so that it's still mostly recognizable, so that people in the crowd, they get it, but you enhance it in your own way. Kind of like Nick Cave did with like Kicking Against the Pricks, that album, and Susie and the Banshees did it with Through the Looking Glass, and just take standard songs and just warp them into your own.
Yeah.
And I love doing that. But when we do that, what I find is that there's little bits in the originals that I hear disproportionately louder or more exaggerated than they actually are in the original.
Why is that? What is it that stands out for you?
I don't know. I was trying to, the other day for funsies, I was playing, I was trying to learn Cheap Trick, I Want You to Want Me. Okay. Because the guitar sound of the lead guitar on that song is so good. And the solo,
It's signature, right? I mean, it's like, it doesn't matter. That's Cheap Trick.
yeah,
Even if you don't know who they are, you will recognize that song.
right. And the whole thing, like on that one, I've heard that it's a studio cut. They just put crowd noise on. They may have recorded a version of it live, but then they kind of took that live version back in the studio and they just re-recorded everything, and then put the crowd noise in and stuff. I've heard that. I don't know if that's true, but I wouldn't doubt it.
I wouldn't either.
If you're just trying to produce a great single, that would be the way to do it.
It would be, pardon the pun, a cheap trick, though.
It would be a cheap trick, but a darn good, darn good sleight of ear trick instead of sleight of hand. But there's just little elements in that song that happen with the lead guitar, just little licks in the background that when you're looking at the actual output decibel, where is it sitting in the mix? Very, very small. Like hardly noticeable, but in my mind, because I heard them, I elevate them.
You know who this reminds me of, Andrew, if I can be honest? Tom Waits.
Okay.
He's a favorite. I mean, my God, I can't live without Tom Waits. But when he does something by someone else, I'm thinking of that Disney album, Stay Awake. And he does the Dwarves, Hi Ho, Hi Ho.
Uh-huh.
He takes that and makes it 100% his own, but you can hear in his production the things that you're describing. This is what stands out for me, right? And I think a lot of it is in that particular tune, industrial, right? Oh. So he's reflecting on not just the industrial sort of nature of mining, but also the sort of, for me, it's the ethos of essentially capitalism, right? Driving these guys into a hole to deliver wealth to somebody, probably not them. Mm-hmm. But the soundtrack of industrial sounds, banging and clanging, and he does that so well. And I think for him, it seems to me, I'm hearing in his music the kind of thing you're describing. It's like, oh, that needs more of an emphasis.
Totally. His work on Sea of Love, when he did the cover of Sea of Love,
please.
It's the same. It felt it was sort of the same thing, where he went in and he found this sort of desperate, driving soul of the song.
Yeah.
So that it wasn't like the Honey Drippers. Remember the Honey Drippers like that?
I do.
It's like, oh, so big and lovely.
Don't throw Plant under the bus. We'll have a conversation.
An artist who I don't personally like their catalog, but have a tremendous respect for the artist. Yeah. Like, so there's parts of it, but to see him, but it's like, yeah, not really my thing. It's a lot like a hip hop artist and things like that. It's like I was never a really big fan of the Beastie Boys, but just had immense respect for what they were doing as musicians and things like that. I didn't listen to them enough to fall in love with them. I was listening to The Cure, at the time, or REM.
I DJ'd a wedding one time for a good friend of mine. and his whole family was there. Obviously, it was at a cabin near Flathead Lake. Beautiful setting. We're out looking over the lake. It's just a really lovely place. Came down to, the post-nuptial ceremony, celebration, and we're just doing our thing. And he's like, put on some Beasties. So I put on some Beasties. I don't remember what I played. But his grandmother, who was, I think, 87 at the time, was out there. I mean, she brought it to the Beasties. It was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. She was having such a joyful time. And I was like, you know what? If 3 kind of knuckleheads doing this stuff can get everyone from the 3-year-olds to the 87-year-olds out there shaking it, hardcore, and having fun, that can't be dismissed.
Oh my God, no. Yeah. I don't know if you ever get this feeling. I get this feeling sometimes when I look at artists that I really respect. And you think about, I usually go back to like the Beatles or Pink Floyd. When I think of the Beatles, and it's just like nobody can touch them. Like they're just so great. They're just so amazing. Their catalog and stuff. But then to go back to, well, those are just 4 guys. That's just a 4-piece band. I mean, yeah, they had obviously other musicians and stuff and they had access, which I think for a musician, this is like a stream of consciousness conversations. Sorry, I'm just going off. As a musician, that access to technology, access to support, access to mentors is so important at some point. And the Beatles, like they put in the 10,000 hours, that whole concept, which they totally did. And they had chemistry and they had genius under, the unpolished stones that was within them from their own personal dysfunction and trauma and life experience and joys and stuff. But, but to see them sometimes, like I remember I've seen Paul McCartney a couple times in concert, just to see the man, just to see it. I wish I would have been able to, John Lennon, I would have loved to have been to a John, just to been in the same space, to breathe some of the same air. Yeah. And feel that. But they were just 4 guys in the end. They're just 4, Tom Waits is an artist who collectively, Oscar, my son who's in my bands with me and stuff, and we just talk music all the time and stuff. There are some artists that you just don't cover. Like he and I will sit down and we'll do some Tom Waits because we can play them and it's great, but that's living room stuff. We would never take that to the stage, because it's just, we couldn't, there's no way that I could do it justice that wouldn't just try and be a 1-to-1 cover and then you're not doing it right. And then you couldn't even do it right. Right. Yeah. I
mean, you're not doing the cover right. In a Tom Waits ethos, you can't just do what I do. If you're going to cover me, you've got to make it your own thing, and it's got to be better than what I did in some sense.
Right. And and he's one of the few artists that it's like, I just can't hear it any better.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's just this, okay, it's just there.
Old 55, when I first heard that, it was on the radio, and it was the Eagles. I was like, oh, that's a quaint little ditty. And I didn't realize that it was a Waits song until years later. And I heard it, I was like, oh, I get it. I see. Glenn Fry, nice guy, don't have anything against you, but you guys did not do this. You shouldn't have done that. For me. Anyway.
Yeah. I'm a huge Johnny Cash fan. When I was little, I wanted to be Johnny Cash. I thought that you could grow up to be I was like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, Johnny Cash. That's who I want to be. I just want to be Johnny Cash. And when Rick Rubin, who, because of the Beastie Boys, I have mixed feelings about, did the whole kind of let Cash reinvent himself and really was a champion for Cash. So I have mixed feelings about Rick Rubin because that was a kindness, but also a huge commercial success, which for Rick Rubin, I guess, is kind of the way it is, which is okay.
I mean, that's the unexpectedness of what Cash did with those records, the whole American series, right, was so revelatory for me. It's like, oh my God, whoever cut this guy loose and let him do the things that he's probably been wanting to do for 40 years and said, just take it in the studio and do it, John.
Yeah.
And then to come out with those records was inspired for me.
I was so appreciative that he had the opportunity to have that voice and kind of walk away from the Branson, Missouri and that soured Nashville crowd and just do the thing.
And he was so honest in that music.
Yeah. I had tickets to see him, and I was in Seattle, and he canceled. And it was the first show, I'm told, again, I was told it was the first show that he canceled that he never made up. So I still have the ticket stubs, that my chance to see Cash, and like 2 weeks before, it's like he canceled. I was like, oh man, that sucked. But
it was right close to the end too.
Yeah. But the thing about those albums, I listened to them obsessively just because there was so much there was that authentic singer-songwriter part of it, that as a singer-songwriter, to chase that, just to try and capture that sound of a guitar and a voice in that quality of a studio. And it kind of goes to, again, access. How do you make that sound? Well, you got a $10,000 mic, and you've got a $1 million board, and you've got, it takes, to capture that takes.
And you've got a room with the right acoustics, and you've got a team of people who are putting it together for you and watching everything to make sure that there isn't any squeaks and groans and whatever we don't want.
And that those things that are the squeaks and groans, that they're left in intentionally. But then you also have Cash, who's got a lifetime of service in the music, of creative service. So I was listening to those, and then a friend of mine one day, I was like, I was playing them, and my friend was like, God, I just don't get this. This is just like a karaoke. It's just Cash singing karaoke.
No.
And I was like, but what I did is I took a step back, and I was like, okay, is that what that is? Or is this Cash actually taking the covers and making them his own? And it was like, well, some of the choices that he made, I wouldn't have made. But then some of the choices he made, I'm so glad that he did, to cover them. And as that series of albums went on, there were fewer and fewer gems in there, and more like, oh, well, let's just do this one. Okay, Bridge Over Troubled Water. It's like, that's a pretty good cover. But I don't think he Cashified it.
I think I can definitely see the karaoke in that. Yeah. And I agree with you on the later albums, less inspirational.
Yeah. But what do we expect from our heroes? What do we expect from these artists? Like, we expect every one of them to land, brilliant. And it gets back to, like, he's just a guy. He's just a guy who's had a weird ass life. And this is what he does for a living. So cut him some slack and be like, oh, that's cool. Every one of, every album can't be Dark Side of the Moon. Every single can't be Purple Rain. It just can't.
It can't. What a boring world it would be if that was the case, if everything was as good as the last thing.
Yeah.
You'd never have anything you anticipate. It's just going to be, I don't know, good. Right. And at some point, all that good just becomes boring.
Yeah. Welcome to generative AI. Everything is just slightly better than the last one. It's like and as a songwriter, that's an unreasonable expectation too. And I find as I age, it gets harder and harder to write songs that are as gritty or real or abrupt emotionally as when I was younger. And the chances that I'm taking now are much different than the chances that I was taking when I was 25 and writing songs. Because then
I think it's taking the chance that matters. That's the thing.
Yeah.
For me, for Cash, right? Back to that conversation. You take a chance on 9 Inch Nails. You take a chance on Simon & Garfunkel. Better pay off on one than the other. That's fine, right? We can see where you were going. You didn't quite hit it, but that's, it's part of your catalog, and we still appreciate what you did.
Oh.
And for you, like you say, the taking chances in a different way as you get to be an older man. That's, for me, that's the thing. I find myself in ruts way too often. And they're ruts that I have agreed to, partly for myself, partly from other people. But it's like, I don't want to do that shit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do something that has some interest.
Well, and ruts that's a cool analogy. And I'm going to write that down because I think I'm going to write a song called Ruts.
Do I get partial songwriting credit?
Absolutely. Put the date down there. Because ruts and rust, because there's just from a language standpoint, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with ruts and guts and rust.
Oh, you're not kidding.
And dust, and that goes. But ruts are helpful because if you're on that cart and you get tired, it's like cruise control. It's like the automatic driving. You just put the wagon in the ruts.
That's right.
Kick the horse. The horse wants to go home, and you can take a nap. And there you go. You're just going to stay on the course. You don't have ruts on the ocean. There are no ruts on the ocean ever. Oh my God, we could get really deep in this from a philosophical standpoint. This is a metaphysical conversation. No ruts in the ocean, no ruts in space, just gravitational pulls.
That's right.
But we're really good at building those barriers and those boundaries, the guardrails to keep us safe, also turn out to be the boundaries that keep us confined, the ruts that make it so that it's easy for us to work our 9 to 5 and just go every day are the same ruts that change our perspective of time. So that time just evaporates. You work a 9 to 5. I know when I was working a 9 to 5, and it'd be like, wow, it's already a week, month, year later. Well, singing happy birthday to me again. It's like a weird thing.
With that same damn sheet cake.
Yeah. You bust out of that. I busted out of the confines of that in the early 2000s and started working from home and just trying to figure it out. And I knew all along, the more that I worked in the cubicles or when I was working in the service industry behind the front counter or anything like that, that it was just like time was just snapping by so quick because I was doing the same thing Monday through Friday. And then it was Sunday night watching The Simpsons and King of the Hill, smoking a joint and just being so bummed out. Like watching the X-Files on Sunday night made me so depressed because I knew Monday morning I'd have to go back to work.
And then you knew the 7 days ahead, what they would look like pretty much.
Yeah.
In detail. Right?
Yeah. I had those ruts really well defined. I think and music is for me always that opportunity to dream that something might interrupt the process and chasing the dream of it as an artist, because I still want to be Johnny Cash. To bear my ass. Yeah, I still want to be a rock star. I still think the best is yet to come in my life. And I'm 57 because I still have songs and I still have voice and I still have the desire and the drive to share that and to experience other people's music. Going out and seeing live music has become so important to me over the past few years. Just to, even if I don't care so much for the artist, to be in the crowd and to analyze what's going on, experience the music, obviously, and allow myself to get swept up in that toe-tapping experience. But then also just to observe how people are interacting with the musician and the musicians interacting with the crowd, and dissect it from an artistic standpoint. And I walk into a venue, the first thing I do is I walk up to the stage and I'm like, okay, well, what are they playing? Okay, they got the amp, pedal board. Oh, I got that pedal. Oh, I don't know that one. Or they don't have any pedals. They're George Thorogood. And they're just like, plug it in and play, stock. It's like,
I'll make my reverb.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated by that. That just, it excites me to go. And then after the show to go talk to the musicians, the bands, and introduce myself and be like, hey, yeah, so I noticed that you were using a glass slide. That was really cool. And with the delay in the wah at the same time on that one song, I think it was, it's something about the dog and the cat, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh yeah, in-laws. I'm like, yeah, that one. That was really cool. That one part was really, like, I shared that moment and pick their brain and see, well, what's the deal?
Picking brains is, I don't know. I think that's a favorite. Let's call it a avocation of mine.
Ooh.
I love doing that. This is why, one of the reasons I do this podcast, right, is I want to pick people's brains about what they do. And back to the ruts conversation, I was talking to a classical pianist. Her name is Daria Vasilova. she was on a previous episode. One of the things that struck me talking to her was, I saw her in performance, and she's playing Alexander Scriabin, which is really interesting atonal music, the stuff that she was playing, some of his later work. And she's doing it all from memory. So she played more than his stuff, but she played, I think, 5 different composers that night. And all of it from memory. And so I asked her, memory? Those are, lots of pianists work from a score. And she's like, scores kind of, I'm paraphrasing, these are not her words, but scores kind of box her in. She prefers to play from memory because she can inhabit it so much more that way. And it's riskier, and that's what she wants. She doesn't want to feel safe. She wants to feel risk when she plays. I think that's genius, and exactly the same kind of thing. I don't want to live my life in this rut. I need to do something that feels a little bit challenging, at least.
Yeah, I'm not technically as a guitarist. I've never been gifted with being able to. I never took guitar lessons. I taught myself. I used to sneak my dad's guitar out of his room and hid it under my bed, and had an old Johnny Cash songbook, and that's how I learned to play guitar.
What was the first song?
It was Wreck of the Old 97.
Well done.
Yeah, and still one of my go-tos. But and of course, I learned to play guitar because my girlfriend in high school was going to see the local bands, because the Missoula scene then was just fantastic. And I was jealous.
Oh my God, Jay's upstairs and the Top Hat, and I don't even remember all of them, but that place was so rich.
Yeah, and there were little venues everywhere. There was like in the basement of it's a pool hall now, and there was crickets, and there were just so many different places. The Elks, the Moose, back then. I think I saw Fugazi at the Moose Club when they came through. But I was jealous because she would go with her friends to see, Damning Flaw and Einheit, which was the precursor to Silkworm, and all these cool bands. And I was like, I was taking piano and I was singing in choir and stuff, but that was like, it was literally like the to get chicks thing was what I was like, started to play guitar. And then once I got the calluses and figured it out, then it became start to write songs. And then it became a personal relationship. Then it became about expression.
Yeah. Do you think of yourself as a storyteller in your songwriting?
Yeah. I think my best songs are definitely story songs. I love that aspect of story song.
And how much of you are in your characters? Are your characters you, or are you fictionalizing you, or is it all sort of, or is it a mix? And maybe not every song is about you, but what's the sort of relationship between your experience and the songs that you write?
I like, I think you and I talked, I'm like Richard Thompson. I'm a huge Richard Thompson fan, and Robin Hitchcock are two singer-songwriters who are huge influences, and Loudon Wainwright III also with a Richard Thompson mix. So for me, I think it's probably 50-50 between the characters I write about, the characters I create are not me, and then 50% are me, true life, or a variation. I've written a few songs that are really violent about guys who kill their girlfriends, murder songs. I've written a series of murder songs, and I always like to write them, in the juxtaposition with the music completely in contrast to the story, because I think
it's happy.
Yeah, it's something like a Sesame Street song.
Yeah,
la, da, 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 about a guy who's, not good, who needed help before an event. Anyway,
you're in a good lineage there. Speaking of Nick Cave, right? Murder Ballads is.
Oh yeah,
that's top 5 for my Desert Island records for definitely sure.
Yeah, or and stuff like Cash with Delia. It's like
Exactly.
that's some dark stuff.
I mean, he's got a
Long
whole.
Black Veil is a dark song.
That's right.
You
He's
know?
got a whole catalog of murder ballads, essentially. Sam Hill, right? All of that stuff.
Oh, yeah. So I guess maybe I shouldn't feel so bad about the fact that I write the material, that the sort of,
I
because
mean, you have to, in my opinion. The full range of expression, we have to be allowed the full range of our expression. And it's going to push up on things sometimes. And that's when we have a conversation. Is it too much? Well, let's talk about that. Who defines it? Why is that particular thing pushing against that guardrail, as you said?
yeah.
And what do we need to do next?
And what's weird is,
Just tamping it down, besides, cutting it out, besides censoring.
yeah, I wrote a song called Brady Bill, which is about, do you remember the Brady Bill?
I do. Yeah, of course.
But I don't think many people today realize that we had that for a while, and that it was really successful to keep people from spontaneously, or falling into that, like getting upset, going and buying a gun, taking the gun, killing someone. It's like that happens way too often.
And that was really let's call it the apex of any American effort to do gun control, right? I mean, there's been legislation since then, but at a national level, that was the best achievement that ever got done, in my opinion.
I think that what they had for a while on the assault weapons ban was going in the right direction. And Reagan did that in California, but only after the Black Panthers started to walk down the street with an open carry.
Not for the right reasons, Ron.
Right, exactly. So I wrote a song called Brady Bill because I thought I was living in Alaska at the time, and the Brady Bill was still in effect. You had to wait 2 weeks to you could buy a handgun, but then you had a 2-week waiting period to pick it up. And so the song is just about a guy who does that, takes his paycheck and goes and buys a gun, and then stews for 2 weeks, then gets the gun, and then goes and kills his girlfriend and her lover. And I've gone back and forth on that song over the years because of the violence towards women specifically,
Right.
and becoming kind of aware of that, and for a part of my life, I looked at that sort of material, like the material like we're talking about, the Cash and Nick Cave and these murder songs, and I was like, man, that's kind of not cool. It's not cool to have art about murdering women and violence against women in that way. And then, as an artist, I kind of went to the next level to give myself permission to say, well, yes, but it's a story song about a guy who's in trouble. And actually the whole point of the song, and the reason I called it Brady Bill, is to say, and I was really justifying to myself, that this is a thing to sing about. This is a thing to look at from a creative standpoint and to have a discussion around. And the fact that I wrote music that I really think is cool and that is interesting and that I would want to hear, that progression and the way the harmonies and the way that the whole thing is built and the clever lines that are in there and the details that I like to add to music, to my songs. Then I kind of came back around to being like, well, no, I think this is a song I could perform and record and it'll be okay. And
you're not advocating that kind of violence. You're inviting a conversation, right? And for what you've just described, what stands out for me is the stewing for 2 weeks. Like, we have an expectation that if I can't have access to my gun for 2 weeks, that's going to somehow stop me from doing whatever I bought the gun for in the first place. It's like, I don't think that's how, I don't want to say human nature, but let me say American capitalists. I don't think that's how we work, right? Mm-hmm. If I have a grudge, we can see this quite plainly today, I'm going to hold that grudge until I am satisfied that my grudge has been, the retribution has been satisfactory. And so we don't have, Americans, I can't remember a time when we talked about how do we deal with the grudge and the persistent for lack of a better word, animosity or hate that we feel oftentimes towards others, whether that's based on something like gender or race or sexual orientation or whatever, or if it's just because I think you done me wrong and you need killing. Whatever the rationale, we don't talk about that stewing.
Right.
We don't have the rational basis to talk about that, in my opinion.
There's so much in our society that's off limits that is only that we only allow the conversation through art. And and for me, because music is so important and so integral to who I am, and has such a strong influence on me. When I'm down, I want to hear down music. When I'm joyous and celebrating, I want to hear joyous music. And it's like MSG, it's just that, you add that spice and it's this plus.
Yeah.
And it's so, and that stewing part in my song, Brady Bill, specifically, that was the part that was the most interesting and fun to write, was that part where, so what does he do? Well, he quits his job, avoids his family, avoids his friends, follows his girlfriend around, and just keeps waiting and waiting and is spiraling in that dark spot. And I think for me that there are parts of me that have that stewing and that spiraling. So it's a story song, and am I the villain? No, but do I understand what they're experiencing? Totally. Have I experienced in my life periods of jealousy that are harmful to me and harmful to my partner and harmful to my friends? Yeah. White American male. Jealousy is one of the tools that you're given right out of the box. It's one of those acceptable responses.
And violence to stop the jealousy, to put an end to what I feel, right?
Right. Yeah.
Permission for that is all over the place.
Right. And I think it's thoughtless on our side. And so for me, exploring that theme and writing that song was personal catharsis, because I explored it. And every time I sing it, I kind of think about it, and I think it's kind of funny. I think the song is funny. But for me, it's funny on so many different levels, because it's also me remembering that night in high school when I was like jealous and blah, 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 and being like, that was crazy. That was, oh man, you're so little. You just didn't know anything.
Had no idea.
You had no idea, but you had all of the capacity to act as any other member of your species.
And you were so fundamentally confident that you were right in feeling the way you felt.
Absolutely. Total justified. And everything on the radio in the 80s was all about the girl broke my heart.
Yeah.
God damn her. I'm so mad. You went off with the other guy. Aerosmith's entire collection is either I'm the best or fuck you, you're the worst. It's like, yeah, that's awesome.
And speaking of violence against women, I was just editing a theology book this morning before we got on this call. And one of the lines is straight out of the Bible, Sirach. The translation goes something like, and Eve brought this upon us, and because of women, we all die. It's like the hate, the pretense. It just boggles my fucking mind, excuse me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I do express that in song. I also have one of my favorite songs that I've written is called Shady Grove, and it's about a woman who's in a nursing home who wakes up and decides to go see the ocean. And to me, that empowerment and that freedom, where she's just like, yeah, I'm old. Well, fuck it. I'm going to go do. And so she does. And it's her story of going. And so that's from a story song standpoint. That was a hard cut, by the way. Let's go from murder to, let's talk about something else now. The story song thing is, I guess maybe all of the characters that I write are part of me, because I want to have that. I want to be the person who wakes up and goes, oh, wait, there was that thing I was going to do. Oh, I had a dream. Oh, I was going to do that thing. Well, I'm going to go do that now. Devil may care. Here I go. That would be something that I would want to have. I would hope is a part of me too.
The helix of your experience written into a song, even where that experience is, obviously you didn't go out and kill your partner. That's not what you're talking about in the song. But the helix of putting that in and connecting with people who feel something similar, right? This is the connection that we can form through music.
Yeah.
I think I recognize in what you say something that I feel, and the invitation to feel it but not act, right? And to begin to understand what my options are in feeling this thing that I feel. I think music has more capacity than probably any other art form to help us through that kind of thing. I don't have to be an asshole, right? This is the take home from songs.
And it's interesting. I think of artists like Hank Williams. It happens I find it in surprising places. Like, why was Hank Williams so popular? And we're listening to the music now, and like, this is really good stuff. I mean, there's some genuine authenticity to what's going on here that I think everybody could relate to. But at that time, the things that he was singing about, and again, it was mostly heartbreak, you done me wrongs, or I love you so much, let's go have funs. But how did that connect with the audience at the time so deeply? And I think it's because he was able to put, even if he didn't write the music, or write all the songs, put himself in that place. And everyone could, and even the people who we would put a stereotype to, you know, the vet, who came back from World War II, who's now working the 9 to 5 in the mill or whatever, could identify with him and would be like, yeah, this is truth.
For me, it's the honesty, right? Whether that's Cash or Hank or Springsteen, right? Same lineage of these are the people that are responding to this music by and large. And what do they bring? They bring honesty. It's like Hank brought his pain, real pain, to the expression of the content of those songs. I think that's what triggers it. And then it becomes, for me, I mean, I like Hank Williams Jr., not nearly as much. And he's later in his life went down a path I wasn't willing to follow, but it was caricatured. His dad's thing was caricatured, not just in his performance of it, but the audience, the songwriting, we're making it bigger and worse in some kind of way with the emotion that's being conveyed. I think that it begins to sour for me a little bit. And then you have somebody like Cash pick it up and like, let's retell these stories in a different way that's a little bit more honest.
Yeah, and it's from when I get it cycles back to that idea of like, well, the Beatles were just 4 guys singing songs. Were they, you know, Cash is just a guy or was just a guy. Mozart was just a guy. You know, Tom Waits isn't just a guy, but he's just a guy.
I don't even know how you characterize Tom Waits.
I know, yeah. To the privilege of being on the planet and breathing the same air as David Bowie and Tom Waits and Prince and Aretha Franklin.
Oh my God!
It's like we're living in the time of legends.
Yeah.
When we went through a technology dump that enabled us to record and share and hear and embrace elements of our fellow species that we wouldn't be able to. We get to travel to see art. You know, you can see the Mona Lisa. You know, if you have the resources, or you know, Tutankhamun's tomb was on tour. Get to a big city and you can see these things. Like, we are the first generation, collectively speaking, that gets to share this with everybody else. And in
a very immediate way.
Yeah. And then, because I'm always a downer, you have Spotify, where you throw your singles out to, where theoretically anybody in the earth could hear and you could share your music with, and nobody listens. because you don't have the right algorithm, you don't have the right marketing.
The algorithms horrify me. Whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Spotify, whatever they are, the shit that they put in front of me every day. Not every day. I don't look every day. But when I do look, it's just god awful.
Yeah.
Like, what are we thinking? You know, my LinkedIn feed, Andrew, back to your point about generative AI, is I'm going to go out on a limb and say 100% not human authored.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's 98, but it's so rare. And what's worse is it's generative AI generated content about generative AI. Like, I hate it. I love it. I use it. I don't use it. It's like, first of all, get off the binary. Second of all, get off the chat box. Third, get off of LinkedIn. You're not doing anybody any good.
Yeah. I was talking, my wife, Stacy, does events, and I was talking to her about this the other day. I said, so, you know, pretty soon you're just going to go to your AI buddy, whatever, Claude or whoever it is, which, okay, it's there. And they're going to say, hey, we helped you put on this event this year. And we helped you do your social media posting. And we helped you develop a calendar and stuff. And you're going to have it again next year. Do you want me to just take care of this for you? And you could say, yeah. And it says, okay, well, okay, see you next year. And it would, and as far as everything except the physical aspect of showing up at the event and the speakers maybe speaking their thing, which may or may not even need to be a thing anymore. Yeah, I could just take care of everything for you. And then I took it to the next step. Well, so it's marketing through social media or LinkedIn and stuff like this and sending emails. And who's responding? Who's reviewing those? AI.
Mm-hmm.
So then in my mind, it's like, so it's then AI talking to AI to get the feedback, which it does, and it gets the clicks and the confirmations. And then on our calendars, however that would show up, you know, on our watches, the email shows up and says, oh, don't forget tomorrow you have to be at that conference at 10 a.m. And then we just we go to the conference that's been totally generated by something outside of us.
For me, I could never cut it at the conference. I'd show up and be like, why am I here again? I don't, you know, if I have to present something, part of the reality of throwing an event is I got to plan it. Otherwise I'm not invested.
Yeah.
I'm going to show up and I'm going to shank it, quite frankly.
Yeah. And this is why I think live music is so important, and why I've found a bit of hope and optimism in the past couple of years with what's going on with Spotify and AI and all this stuff. Because when I do go to a live show and I see people with wooden wire on stage doing their thing, connecting with the crowd, shanking it, not hitting the notes, not hitting the solo, and which I love so much more than the polished stadium shows, which are, you know,
boring.
They're boring. They're delivering what you want to see, you know. And
Candy is Coca-Cola, like
great.
you said before.
It is. It's like to see. I saw My Chemical Romance in Seattle a couple of years ago. They were doing the Black Parade. Went with my kids. Amazing show. Totally just like mind-blowing experience. It was the experience was so great, and they hit every single note, and it was just a fantastic thing. Except in the middle, in the one part, because it was the first show of the tour, they screwed up this one little part that I noticed, and I was just delighted because it reminded me, there's just four guys in a band.
That's right.
And so I think live music, and what I'm seeing from kids these days and kids my age, is that there's that authenticity, that realness, that connection. People are wanting to, and they're actually getting out and seeing live music and doing that, and buying LPs to support the artist.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's super encouraging because it's the pushback from the other side of the mic that is required to keep songwriters to make it worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I put a single out on Spotify and anybody in there can hear it, but nobody does. But that's maybe because today 10,000 other songs got released, and that's 10,000 other dorks like me who put time and effort and energy into doing something. And maybe some of that is AI. Maybe some of that is total commercial. But a good chunk of that is also guys in their bedroom, girls in their garage, spending time and money and energy to create something. So I'm okay being part of that river, even if nobody hears it but the ones who I send the links to specifically.
It's also part of we complained about I complained about the algorithm. You, I think, are more generous. But it's also the reception, right? I have some responsibility as a listener to go beyond what I'm used to. Spotify feeds me what I'm used to. I mean, when I just let it stream something, if I'm out mowing the lawn, for instance, I listen to a record and it just segues into its own, this is, whatever radio algorithm. It does pretty good. It pulls up stuff that's like, fine, I can deal with this while I'm out here finishing the yard. But it's not new, generally speaking. It's not new to me, in other words. But it's also not the single that you just released. So I have to take some responsibility for digging. I got to look. I got to know what's out there, what's new. Where do I find new music? How do I get it in my stream? Not just the news thing from Springsteen or Roger Waters or whoever, but from Andrew Hunt and Flask. Is there something out there that I should be listening to? How do I know?
Yeah, my kids. During COVID, we did a road trip. We got a pull camper and a pickup, and we'd always homeschooled our kids anyway. And my wife and I work from home, so we were always kind of the home-based collective all together. But when COVID hit and we were really cooped up, we were like, well, let's do a tour of the world or the United States. And so we did, from Missoula, Montana, all the way. And my only stipulation was I don't want to do fastest travel points, main roads, because I didn't feel comfortable pulling the camper on I-90, A, and B, I'm a back road kind of guy. Like if I'm driving from here to Seattle and I don't have anything to do, instead of taking 7 hours at 70 miles an hour, I'll take the frontage roads and meander. I'm still that kind of I still enjoy that driving part.
It's the best way.
So that was the stipulation, is like, well, B routes instead. So you see the backside, you see a lot of what the commercialization and the commodity of America don't want you to see. You see the oil fields burn off. You see the power plants, you see the industrial egg waste, and you see the industrial farms. You see the mobile home lots where everyone lives and works, in small towns that were forgotten because the highway went the other way. And on that trip, my kids, we'd pass around, well, who get to listen to what? And they introduced me to new music that I would have never found. Telly Hall and Will Wood, and these bands and artists that then, you listen to that one song that and then Spotify takes over and and it just totally blew my mind and opened up a whole different world of music and influence for me. But it was accidentally concerted, to not be comfortable just listening to the Dwight Yoakam and, which I listened to for a few years, and then breaking out of that. And so it takes accident and it takes effort, but active listening. And sometimes, and I don't know about you, especially from the writing perspective, I don't necessarily always trust the audience. I can be really cynical about the audience these days. And as a songwriter, sometimes it limits what I want to show, kind of circling back on that, where I don't necessarily trust the audience is going to go with me on these voyages of things that I think are cool.
I think like Brady Bill, right? Your song.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to put out. Even if you justify it in advance and explain what you're doing and make it clear that this is not advocacy, right? You're still putting it in front of people who are maybe not actively listening, maybe coming with their own preconceived notions, and they're going to receive it in a way that, maybe is not what you want.
Yeah.
I totally understand the like dropping this into a well of people who have a whole lot of opinions, and how are they going to react? That's a rough place to be sometimes.
Yeah. And if you indulge me and go with me on this, and maybe you can, because I'd be curious about your take. The last single that we just released for the band Flask, which is my original stuff, that isn't the family-friendly Cowboy Andy stuff, was called Christians.
I saw that release. Yeah, I saw the announcement.
And the song, the full title of the song is Christians Shouldn't Breed. Yeah. So, and I wrote this, and I remember I wrote 4 songs that week, and this was the second one. And I wrote it as I was driving to work. I was in Anchorage. It was the middle of winter, 7-foot snowdrifts. And I was going to Kinko's, where I was an assistant manager. And I had a pad, and I was writing it with one hand as I was steering with my 2-wheel drive Ford F-150 truck that was just like all over the freaking road. It was awesome. But it struck me, and I just started to write this song. So I wrote it. And it's a Bo Diddley beat, hand jive basically. And the song is called Christians Shouldn't Breed, and we shortened it just to Christians. And it's three vignettes, 3 little stories about 3 encounters that people have that are influenced by their religion that end badly.
We're going to do something new this week. Bear with us. Andrew and I had a really fruitful conversation, and I think it works best split over 2 episodes. So that was part 1, and part 2 will drop next Wednesday instead of in 2 weeks. So we're just trying this out, going to run with it and see how it works. To finish the thought for this week, we'll close with Christians, the song Andrew was just talking about. See what you think. And then next week, we'll pick up here, learn a little bit more about the song, and see where the conversation goes next. I think this is a very strong piece of songwriting with excellent guitar work and a solid 80s vibe. It's got terrific vocalizations and these lyrical hollers and killer energy with a kick-ass interpolation of your favorite, I'm going to call it, Christmas classical piece. So stick around and dig that. I really love the keyboards as well in this song. And that's Oscar, Andrew's son, by the way, playing keys. So let's get to it. Here's Christians, written by Andrew Hunt and performed by Flask.
Well, she packed up her bags and came down from Connecticut, looking for a Rainbow Warrior male. He was fresh out of prison with only a passion for Cape Cod and religious paraphernalia. They met in Detroit, got a hotel. Shortly thereafter, it all went straight to hell. Which means Christians shouldn't breed. First day out of boot camp, he came down with a clap, gave it to his darling fiancée. But all's fair and even, she slipped it to his best friend, who still holds a grudge to today. After they met in Detroit, got a hotel. Shortly thereafter, it all went straight to hell. Which means Christians shouldn't breed. Much to the dismay of her priest. Unwed mother of many, now looking for work. She'll pick up bottles, Christ, she'll change sheets. And she lives in Detroit, works at a hotel. But the day she told me, Andrew, my life's gone straight to hell. She said that means us Christians shouldn't breed.
Wrapping up this episode of The Sum of All Wisdom with Christians, written by Andrew Hunt and performed by Flask. This one is out on Spotify, just released a couple of weeks ago, and it's linked in the show notes for you. Andrew Hunt was my guest today, and we'll be back next Wednesday with a special episode drop so that Andrew and I can finish our conversation. Thank you for turning us on, and if this conversation resonated with you, please consider sharing it with others, and if it provoked you, please let us know that too. And I hope to see you here next Wednesday. In the meantime, The Sum of All Wisdom is written, produced, and hosted by me, Dr. Scott Cady, released by Ravenna Studios, and distributed by Transistor FM. We proudly use Riverside.com and Audacity to record, edit, and produce the podcast. Thanks. See you next time.